Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here, Rab Shmuel ben Yehoshua. Yes, Rashbi in the house. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me join you. And thank you for all the folks that either came out for our Friday night service or in person. Thank you for all the folks that got on either Facebook or YouTube and followed us there. Apparently, we've done the right thing. We've gotten a new little microphone here that made all the difference with the YouTube video, so that seems to be real clear. Next week, on Saturday, we will be having a seniors only. Just a few seniors coming in Saturday morning. Want to give them a chance, do the spacing, and keep everybody safe. And we will still be broadcasting. And then the following week, and by the way, that's 4th of July, and happy 4th of July to everybody. The following week, we will pick up and do another Friday night service. We'll live stream it, etc., etc. Okay, so once again, you've all been so good. So we're giving you a twofer this week, okay? Two portions, and for 1 week, we've got Hukat and we've got Balaak. And as we've said before, the reason we're doubling up on the portions is because this is a regular year, only 12 months. And there's a couple of portions that need to be combined in order to get us back to the Simchat Torah. And again, it also accounts for those special Shabbatot where it either incorporates a festival, or maybe we have two festivals in that particular Shabbat. So that's kind of how it's done. So a lot going on this week, and let's see if we can put it into some perspective. So first, Hukat starts off with the Para Aduma. This is the red cow, the red, or people say brown, and this is a cow that does not, it only has red or brown hairs. If it has more than 2 hairs of a different color, black, white, whatever, that cow is disqualified. Okay, so Hukat means what? It's a decree. It's God saying, why do we do this? Because I said so. That's a decree. That's a hukat. Another example of hukat, of course, is kashrut. Why some foods and not others? Because God says so. That's the way we keep holy. So the idea of the para aduma, the red cow, and some folks, the Mishnah say that this is how Jacob knew Joseph, because Joseph, the last thing that they were doing when they were studying Torah, and yes, Torah has always existed even before Moses, wrote it and brought it down to the Israelites, was this particular decree. We're talking about the red cow. And this is done when somebody has to, somebody dies in a tent, and some of the Israelites go in and, they take care of the body, final cleaning, and they dispose of the body, which is just a shell, and now they're contaminated. They're ritually, spiritually contaminated. So the cow is burnt, and the ashes are sprinkled over the person to purify them. Now the people that did the purifying, now they're impure, and they got to go outside the camp, and they sprinkle the water on the 3rd day and the 7th day, and then they can come in. The moral of the story is that sometimes to purify somebody, you have to become impure yourself. And in a way, it's a mitzvah. You're doing something good for someone. And yes, you're taking on some of that spiritual contamination, but you're doing it for a good cause. Okay. Next, very critical point here, Miriam dies. Okay. And Miriam, you hear the word Miriam, and what Hebrew word does it sound like? Mayim, water. And Mayim sounds like Mem. It's the letter Mem. And a lot of the letters in Hebrew also mean words. Mem, Mayim, water. So because of Miriam's virtue, the Israelites found a well every 3 days. And this is one of the reasons why we have minyans on Monday and Thursday. Some synagogues do that, where they do a little Torah service. They call up 3 aliyot. And because they've decreed, water is a metaphor for wealth. It's also a metaphor for learning, for nourishing the body. We can't live without water after a few days, right? Live without food, but not water. So it was by Miriam's virtue that they found water. Miriam is now gone. No water. So the people start complaining. Here we go. Here's the grumbling again. What's going to happen with the water? And Moses and Aaron go to God, and God says, talk to this rock, this particular rock. And Moses at this point is fed up, right? It's been 40 years. The Torah is jumping around in time. So what is Torah? Is Torah a history of the Jewish people, of our heritage? Kind of. Is it a rule book for life? Yes. Torah is ultimately, and I'm going to give you my perspective, is really a history of Judaism. How did it develop? So the chronology, the exact order of things, and some people will talk about the Torah as literature. We feel it's a lot more than that, so we don't see it that way. But the chronology really has to do with the giving of the laws. So at this point, the chronology has jumped. We had the spies, and now it's about 40 years later, right? Because Miriam is old and she dies, and next Aaron's going to die, and what do they do about the water? So God says, go talk to the rock. So instead of speaking to the rock, Moses has been doing this for 40 years. Maybe his frustration got a little bit too much for him, and people who are great, people as great as Moses, who was the greatest prophet of all time, a lot of prophets, get messages from God maybe in their sleep or in a trance. Moses, it's like you and I talking. He yells at the rock. He takes his staff and he beats the rock twice. And God says, okay, neither one of you are going into the promised land. You're just not up to it. Now, people talk about why Moses and Aaron were punished this way, because some people say, well, he disobeyed God. But if you remember back in Acharei Mot, the portion Acharei Mot, after Nadab and Abihu went into the inner sanctum and they burned the wrong combination of incense and God took them, what did Moses say? He said, God said, I will be sanctified by your actions. Well, Moses didn't sanctify him. He kind of embarrassed God. God said, do it this way. He didn't. And God's like, the greater you are, the greater the consequences. It's a big responsibility. So now Moses and Aaron are not going to get to see the promised land. Of course, one could say that whoever Moses was, what he was, his perception, it almost didn't matter. I mean, he knew what the promised land was, and at the end of his life, we're going to come to that, he got to see it. All right. So the next step is Aaron. Aaron, God says to Eliezer and you, go up to the mountain in the cave, and you are to give your vestments to Eliezer. It's the passing of the responsibility as being the head priest, and Aaron lays down and God takes him. And God takes him when these people died. It's not like they died. Dying is a very traumatic experience. But for them, it's like taking a hair, pulling it out of milk, taking your soul and just pulling it out of your body. And it's almost like what the Indians would call enlightenment. Just this idea that, body, no body, doesn't matter, that perception is ever present. So it also talks about some of their journeys. Now, next portion, Balaak. Balaak was a Moabite warrior, and he saw this mass of Israelites like locusts wherever they went. And again, this is our clue that it's now 40 years later. We have a new generation. And the generation is moving toward the promised land, and they're winning all their battles, and the Moabites were, understandably a little concerned. So they got this guy Balaak, and Balaak knew this wizard from Mesopotamia, Balaam, and he told him, he said, I need you to come and curse the Israelites. You seem to have this connection with God or whatever. And at first, God said, don't do it. So Balaam said, no, I'm not going to do it. Okay, talk about the art of the deal, because then Balaam said, well, I got some riches here for you. And Balaam was like, okay. For that money, sure. So they're coming from Mesopotamia, they're coming back to Moab, and there's the incident with the talking donkey. And I believe we've talked about this. Did the donkey really talk? Was it a dream? Was it something that was arranged from the beginning of time, beginning of creation, that God created this talking donkey? Or was it just Balaam's conscience, getting the better of him? So instead of the curses, he pronounces blessings. And Balaak is like, wait a minute, this isn't what I paid you to do, So Balaam's like, look, you told me to work with God, and this is what God's doing. It's not me, it's God, it's Hashem. So here we have an example of a foreign prophet who had that connection with God. The point is that, we say the Jews are the chosen people. We're chosen, to bring God's message to the world. But you know what? If you're not a Jew, it doesn't mean God loves you any less. It doesn't mean you're not as special. God holds all of us special. In fact, they said that in the 70 nations that inhabited, the ancient world, they all had their own angel. And the difference is that, we had that connection with God, that direct, correct connection with God, because God offered us his commandments, and we said, yes, we will do and we will hear. We said we committed to it even before we knew what they were. That was the level of our faith. Now, it's kind of interesting, and we're going to close with this, that you had Israelites that were all for it. They were all in on that, and yet we had all that grumbling. So, here it is. We've seen the best and we've seen the worst of our people, but now we're seeing this new generation that's going to go in and take the land, and we're going to lead up to it. Other things are going to start happening. Again, Numbers is really coming to the fore. It's really kind of putting everything together. And yes, it reads like a drama, but just remember, it's all didactic. All of these really are to show us, God's way, and for us to kind of have the impetus to follow Hashem. So, thank you for tuning in. Shabbat Shalom, a little early. And please join us Saturday online. Please join us the following Friday, either in person or online as well. Shabbat Shalom.